Everyone, I want to welcome our newest member, Ryan Gallagher. Ryan, it's customary for you to introduce yourself and anything you'd like to say to the committee, so I'll start with that.
Of course, nice to meet you all. My name is Ryan Gallagher from Santa Fe. Went to St. Mike's and Santa Fe High, graduated from University of New Mexico, worked a lot in finance with Thornburg, worked for Raymond James, and then started a business in Santa Fe and sold it 2 years ago, and now back working in finance, and excited to be a part of this group.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for that. So Elizabeth, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Joanne Vigil Koppler.
Here.
Melissa Coleman. You're muted, Melissa.
Oh, there she is.
Okay. Megan McGarity.
Here. Did you hear me? Melissa
Yes,
Coleman.
ma'am, I did. Yes, ma'am. Ryan Cordova.
I'm here.
John Fines.
Good morning. Welcome back, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Nice to see you all. Robert Lurcott.
Present.
Ryan Gallagher.
Here.
Kate Kennedy. Joanna Nelson. Victoria Murphy.
Kate Kennedy and Joanna Nelson are excused.
And I'd like
and
to add that
Victoria-
Victoria Murphy is switching offices, and she will sign in if she can in between. Thank you.
Thank you. You do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next item is number 3, approval of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes from staff?
There are no changes from staff.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Mr. Walcott?
I was under the impression we were going to have a weekly or monthly update on the Midtown campus project, and I don't see that on the agenda. Is that?
I didn't recall that, and if we were, my mistake. I'm not sure, Rich, I don't think there's anything we can do at this point, but Rich, perhaps you can put that on the matters for the next meeting, and
Yes, Madam
perhaps
Chair.
we will have even more to say or more to know at that time.
Yeah.
Rich?
Madam Chair, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yes, we will add it to the agenda. It'll be on a monthly basis since this is a monthly meeting. So I will make sure that we have some sort of update. At least the progress reports will be in a packet and we can have a discussion.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Robert, for bringing that to my attention and our attention. Any other matters on the agenda? All right, do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Any
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for approval of the agenda. Elizabeth, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Melissa Coleman.
Present.
No,
Yes.
yes or
I'm
no?
sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. I was thinking before.
Megan McGarity.
Approve.
Ryan Cordova.
Approve.
John Fines.
Yes.
Ryan Gallagher.
Approve.
Robert Lurcott.
Yes.
Chair Joanne Vigil Koppler.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Next, we have approval of consent agenda, but there is none, so I'm going to pass that. Approval of the minutes for February 17th, 2021. Is there any discussion on this matter? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 17th, 2021?
So move. Second.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, will you please call for the voice vote?
Yes, ma'am. May I ask you who seconded that? I didn't see it. Who seconded?
Was it
John.
Ryan Cordova?
John.
Oh, John.
Yeah.
John, there you are. Okay.
Okay, Melissa Coleman.
Approved.
Megan McGarity.
Approved.
Ryan Cordova.
Yes.
John Fines.
Yes.
Ryan Gallagher,
Yes.
Robert Lurcott,
Yes.
Chair, Counselor Joanne Vihel Coppler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is, of course, action items on consent. There are none, so we'll move to number 7, action items for discussion, potential approaches to creating an economic development strategic plan. Before we start this, I know that we just very recently got our agenda packet. There's a lot in there, a lot of good information. I want to say that it's not the intent to go over all these items. Believe me, we would be here all day.
Yeah.
What I would like to happen here is a discussion with staff about process. How do you go about starting to create a strategic plan? And the reason this is on the agenda is we did have some discussion prior meetings about wanting for this group to create a strategic plan so that we know more about what our purpose is and where we want to go as a group. Now, it's a huge undertaking. Many of you, I'm sure, have been involved in your own organizations with creating a strategic plan, and it takes first of all, a lot of planning effort to even get to the first step. And then the discussion takes quite a bit of time. And then you have a recorded document for historical purposes and to work toward to achieve the goals that have been set. I also want to recognize that economic development staff is terribly loaded on their plate, especially with Midtown and all of the things. I mean, there's so many other things. All you have to do is read the newsletter and you know a lot about what economic development staff is doing. And because this is a big undertaking, I know I probably created a little bit of stress for staff about, gee, now how do we get this done? But it's not insurmountable. And the first way to get started is to get the first step done. So today is, I hope, a discussion from staff about what they foresee, and then about what the committee wants to do. How do we want to approach this? And we need to recognize again that it's going to take a few meetings. So with that, I'll ask Rich to go ahead and begin. And if I've misstated anything, please correct me. Thank you.
Counselor, for the record, I just want to note that Joanna Nelson has joined us.
Welcome, Johanna. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for being on today. I actually put 2 documents in the packet for today. And thank you, Madam Chair, for saying that we don't have to go through every single thing, because I wanted to just bring you up to speed. And both documents have different paths. So I want to first talk about economic recovery with the one document, the 2 or 3 page PDF document that I have there. And then the second one is just a framework to give you a sense of what the city is, what the city's trying to do, and what the approach is for strategic planning. On the strategic planning front, I was sort of planning that for waiting through the budget hearings for FY22 to start this process in depth in July, but we can definitely have the conversation starting today. But in July, we will definitely dig in to what the planning process is about, what we want to do, what data that needs to come into play, market research that come into play, and then we will, as staff, likely outsource some of the consulting work that provides sort of strategic viewpoints to bring to this committee to iterate as it comes through. And again, Madam Chair, you're correct. It's not a 1-month process. It'll probably take 6 to 9 months before we see a finished document that gets memorialized into ordinance. So I wanted to just lay that out front and say thank you for your patience on this. We are a little busy, but we are definitely looking at this, especially in this fact that we're going into a new normal and a new fiscal year. And as we see the economy bounding a little bit and the pandemic decreasing a bit, we need to sort of look at what's happening in the future. So with that, I want to really start with the PDF that says 7 Paths to Local Economic Recovery. If you have that, if you don't, I'm going to share my screen and we can sort of go through it real quick. So what I really want to discuss today really is that our approach currently is that we're looking at seven items at 1,000-foot level that says, here are the things that a city should be addressing as we make our way through this economic downturn, turning the corner. What we have uncovered, and I think everyone here knows, is that this city is made up of a lot of micro businesses. Micro businesses as in annual revenue of less than $750,000 a year. We don't have a lot of very large businesses. We have a lot of very small businesses. And this department, and generally community development, focuses on three major audiences: businesses, residents, and tourists. And so as we look at economic recovery and resiliency, those three audiences are put into mind as we think about this next path forward for us as we come out of this first fiscal year, a new federal stimulus plan coming down the pike, and all this new legislation coming from the state. So mixing it all together, I just want to talk about some of the themes at the 1,000-foot level. And then there's some buckets of recommendations, but I really wanted to hear from our committee if they'd like to add anything more so that I can put it into the mix. I am meeting with my community development department to sort of look at all of these. And then I'd like to come back again as we start to create some sort of plan that we can put out to the public once we know we have some grant dollars or some general fund dollars that can be addressed to it. So first and foremost, some of these are specifically to economic development, and some of them are general city responsibilities. So first, make recovery everyone's business. Secondly, advance equity and opportunity for all. Third, unleash your local economy in some way. Zone for equitable and sustainable neighborhoods. Speed and broaden delivery of essential services. And then leave no dollar behind, and then build a readiness culture. So those are the big sort of bigger pictures, and I want to sort of drill down to the ones that I believe that economic development has some responsibility for. That leave no dollar behind is one. That leave no dollar behind means that we should be pursuing any grant money, any free money, philanthropy, nonprofit, federal grants, state grants, so that we can try to do some creative and innovative work that help us recover out of this economy. We are reaching out of a deficit from our own city, and so we don't want to leave any dollar behind. And so the grant money that's coming through, I'd like to set up another meeting, hopefully next month at our next advisory committee meeting, to talk about the federal stimulus and how it affects economic development. So that's one thing I will put on the agenda for next month. Speeding, broadening delivery of essential services. Economic development has business licensing as a part of its coterie, and we are trying to automate that in some way. One of the things that happened last year was that we were able to get a resolution approved to have a renewal of licenses. And so we are working through that. People are getting the licenses done. And I actually met with Kate Kennedy earlier this morning. And so she has some issues that we're going to address as it relates to this essential services, only just from a business licensing standpoint. Believe it or not, we are getting more new license requests than you would actually think. There are at least 80 calls a day into the business license office, whether it's email or by phone call. So that level of inquiry in these times, to me, is a good sign, indicator. Oops, someone has their echo off. Melissa, I think, has a question. Someone raised their hand. I'm sorry, I can only see my screen.
It's hard for me to see everyone as well with the.
Okay,
with
so
the,
maybe I'll go through the major ones and then we can open the floor. And then unleash your local economy. Again, this is where economic development definitely plays in. We have a number of initiatives underway to help from that standpoint. As the counselor mentioned earlier, Liz sends out a monthly newsletter chock full of resources and information to help small businesses sort of navigate their way. We're also looking at how to look at our tourism industry. We're also addressing the buy local aspect. We're also looking at what do you do about sick pay for businesses. Some businesses can't afford it, and then they have an essential employee who gets sick. So that ties into some of the state legislation. But it's other ways to bring some soft or hard dollars or grant money to the table that allows us to help stimulate local economies in different ways. And then make the recovery everyone's business. As you know, we have been working on the Santa Fe Promise campaign, and Liz can speak to it if you have any deeper questions, but it's all about a different phasing of public awareness. And we're in this public awareness space where we've been talking about testing, we're talking about vaccination, and then we will probably end our way through with all the benefits that or programs that are available for business and tourists as it relates to the recovery of the economy. And we have food security that we're working on. We have housing that we're working on. We have business resources that we're working on. So from an economic development standpoint, we work with other departments in the city to talk about the recovery and the social determinant of health for a healthy city. So with that, I'm going to open up for questions, but I wanted to say that these are kind of the 7 themes that we're working on as a total city organization. But I wanted to open up the viewpoint of what economic development brings to the table. I'll close the screen so we can see everybody's faces.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Rich. So comments from anyone so far? Melissa Coleman.
Thank you, Counselor. I have 2 questions as a business owner. I would like to know, does this committee have any input on the business licensing and process? And 2, are there plans within the city or through economic development to address the cumbersome process that people have to go through just to be able to get a license and open up a business?
First, let me address this by saying this committee can certainly provide input on anything. All right. So at that point, we can determine, whether we have authority to direct anything that's come up to happen. So don't hesitate to bring up your suggestions or ideas, and then we go from there. Right, Rich?
That's correct, Madam Chair. Okay. That's correct.
So do you want to address Melissa's points?
Yeah, thank you. Melissa, sure. Yes, we all have business licensing and registration as a part of our department. And we are in the process or currently automating a lot of the process for renewal. So if you do have a renewal or new license issue, please let us know. I think your business is in the county though, so it's a different jurisdiction. But if you're a county business, and the state of New Mexico has a very odd law where if you're doing business in the city or any city, you have to get a license in that city. So as a county business, you could still get a license here. It should be pretty easy, and I can get you the contact of the person on our team. She's not here today, who can help.
I'm only asking this as a general information question. I know I'm in the county. I do have a Santa Fe business license as well. But I just in my circle of acquaintances and local business owners, it is a very cumbersome process to go through to get a new business license.
Yes, I agree with you. Sorry, I agree with you. There are a lot of steps. You have to go from the state to the city, to the state, to the department, to the fire department, to the permit department, to the compliance department, to the city again, and then you have to pay, and then you get your license, and then you're good to go. And we actually, before the whole pandemic hit, I was trying to work with the state tax and rev division to see if we could get a batch of CRS numbers that we could automatically put in our system, because then you'll save at least 2 different trips. I didn't even mention that you have to still go back to the workforce development department to register there once you have your license. And so it is a onerous step process to get it done. And especially, as I mentioned earlier, that if you're a micro business, that's time and money spent. And so, yeah, it needs fixing in some ways, and it would be great that we all could figure out a simple electronic solution, but we're trying to, on our city side, just to make it a little bit more automated, where you have to go into the city to pay your bill, or you get a notification by email that says it's time to renew by these 60-day period. So we're trying to put some small steps in to make it a little less cumbersome and a little less too many steps that we can take out of the process. So, but hopefully I'm making a note that I can come back and say, here's kind of where we are. And I'd love to give you some stats on what's been happening so far, because they've processed a lot of licenses.
Thank you. I mentor women with starting their own business, and it's such a headache for them to go through the multiple layers and steps to do that. So that was my reasoning for my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Melissa. Robert Lurcott, you're next. You have to unmute. There you go.
Thanks. Number 4 in your list, Rich, seems different than the others. The others are sort of broad aspirations in a way. That seems more programmatic. And I'm wondering, is there a specific program underway or developing to deal with that, or is that ongoing?
It's ongoing. Thank you for the question, Mr. Lorcott. Think of this as that these sort of 7 steps came from the Council of Mayors and a think tank. And so, each city has all their issues with permitting, et cetera. And so this is an ongoing piece, but they believe that as we go out into this new economy and we see, you need to change some of your zoning code so that it's more amenable to businesses and neighborhoods, so that growth can happen, or that it's easier to launch a business, or it's easier to build for the future. And so it is an ongoing process. It won't happen overnight. We have issues with Chapter 14 zoning, and that's not going to be an overnight change. But we're putting them on notice, basically, or putting that portion on notice, that if we want to be equitable in our neighborhoods and et cetera, that we need to sort of address some of the problems that we're facing with our current code and permitting.
Yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Megan and then Johanna.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm having technical difficulties today, so I apologize for the blinking in and out of the camera. I actually had 2 questions for you, Rich. My first question was about anticipated, about the no dollar left behind. I recognize that there are opportunities coming in and grant opportunities. But what I've learned recently is that there's so many grant opportunities that it's really difficult to narrow in and decide, which ones are the best opportunities and the best fit. So I'm just wondering how your team is strategizing about, we can't possibly apply for every grant. So how do we strategize on winning the grants that we do apply for and applying for the grants that are the best fit for our city?
Yes.
One question.
That's, oh, sorry. What, so that
no,
first?
I'm sorry. Let's talk about that first. The second one is about zoning and Midtown.
That's a very good question. Well, I think there's 2 answers to it. One is that we are unclear about the federal money. We know it's going to rain down on our cities, right? We know that for certain. And you're right. It's like, which dollar do you grab that's raining down? But we also know that through the pandemic, job training and workforce development and housing are key components that were big issues that affected folks, and food security, right? So we know those are 3 big priorities. One of them is job training and workforce development. That fits into our bailiwick as economic development. So when we see the grant money coming, one for job and workforce development, we will look into that category. The second one is small business and recovery and grants. We know that's the other second priority. So those 2 major paths are the ones that we'll take when we really uncover what the federal government's going to do. The big sort of dark moment, what door to open, is that we don't know whether the money is going to go to the state government and then come to us, or to come directly to the city. If you don't know, recently there was a ruling in the new administration that they are changing the designation of a metropolitan city from 500,000 or more, 100,000 or more, to 500,000 or more. And right now we're designated as a metropolitan city. We will be turning into a micropolitan city because we don't meet that number. And that changes the way federal dollars come to us. That changes the way the federal government looks at us as it relates to grants, et cetera. So we have to sort of put that all into the mix. So job training and small business recovery is where we'll look at all that money that hopefully will be raining down on us.
Does that micro city designation help us?
It doesn't help us, no. It doesn't help us from a multimodal transportation. It doesn't help us for gobs of money for housing. It doesn't at all. And so there's a big fight going on, and it hasn't been approved through the regulation, but it just came out the other day that they're considering it. And so there's 140 cities around the country that are in this same position.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I think that might be worth understanding better and how it impacts our opportunities in recovery, especially since population is an ongoing concern for our city.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So my second question was connected to the zoning question. When I was with Team Midtown, one of the things that I just never had the chance to really understand well was why we can't do a text amendment to the link overlay project for the Midtown to expedite the zoning in that area. My understanding was talking to KDC Sonida that would help move the needle forward in terms of getting project shovel ready there. But it just seemed like during the charrette, I wasn't present for the descriptions from the city about why that wasn't a possibility.
Yeah, that's another good question. I have an expert in the room. I'm going to ask Sean maybe to address it, but from what I know, and I think Sean can add some color, is that keep in mind that the campus is listed as a residential parcel. And the school that was there, because it's an educational institution, has full reign into what usage they can do. There's no longer a school there. It's a residential part of land. And so to change it from a residential part of land to a commercial mixed piece of land, which is a C2 zoning, does not require an administrative sign the pen change. It requires a lot of work that you need to do to get it from that R2 to a C2 designation. And it was uncovered in the charrette as a part of that discussion. And I don't think anybody, but we talking about that for months. And it's not what you think that it's an administrative change. It isn't. It's actually a long-term, it could take to 9 months. But you have to, in order to make it a vibrant community or parcel, you have to change that zoning from R2 to C2. And it's not just a signing of a pen. It's a much more, I wouldn't call it laborious, but a longer process to make that change. So Sean,
Did the link overlay only apply to commercial property?
no, it doesn't. It doesn't apply to the commercial,
Yes.
but you have to be a,
Yes.
it does. But keep in mind that the parcel has a specific zoning that it has to change in order to get all those incentives.
So that was what I was wondering, if it was that residential designation that made it ineligible to be wrapped into the link overlay.
Mm-hmm. Sean or Fabian? I just saw Fabian speak up.
I'm not sure I
Sure,
understand
I'll
the link
answer
overlay,
that.
so
Yeah.
it could just be me not getting it.
Yeah, the link overlay is specifically designated for commercial zoning. So,
Okay.
so it only applies for commercial properties. And in this particular case, because the city owns the property, it's already off of the books for property taxes, and so there's a lot of things that that can happen there. And furthermore, to talk about the zoning process requires an ordinance approval by the governing body, which is a pretty considerable process. It's about as much as 9 months is what Rich said. And so you have to go through a lot of that, and it may not be C2 that you want there. It may be I1, I2, C2, mixed use. You have to really know what you're going to put over there. So the best thing for the city would probably be you to think about like a master planning type of a thing. I mean, Sean knows about that more than I do, but if you go through a master planning idea, then rezone is the best way to do that. And the reason you want to do a master plan, because we follow our own rules, is that the fastest way to go to expedite the building or getting people to go into the building process is to do a master plan, so you can go straight into a building permit. And so that's how you can go, because if not, you'll have to go through the entitlement process, and then you'll have to do a plan for every one of these projects, and you don't want to do that. You want to have the whole parcel set up where it's master planned, and then when the master developer who ends up getting it, then they can just go straight into a building plan, and they can sell the parcels or however they want to do that. But that's one of the ways that you can expedite doing construction or doing expansions in Santa Fe.
Great, thank you. That was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Megan, do you have anything further?
That finishes my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Johanna and then John.
Hi, thank you, Counselor. I had a few questions for clarification. In terms of the current plan for the city of Santa Fe, is the most current plan that addresses economic development, is it that 2017 Crossroads plan, or what is the most current plan?
The most current plan, yeah, it's a melange of things, but the most current plan that separates into specifically economic development strategy is the Angelou plan. The Crossroads report is an update of that plan. And that's from 2017, I think.
And then Rich, I did have another question and then one more after that. In terms of the timeline on this proposal, what is that timeline? A broad overview of when this would come into play.
This recovery plan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're looking at it from, starting April 1 until the end of the year. And it's really based upon the pandemic timeline and the economic downturn timeline, because recovery doesn't happen in a minute and resiliency takes time. So we're looking at a long-term sort of a series of initiatives, programs, ideas, concepts that we want to put in place. One of them mainly is that we need to sort of work on changing the mindset for some businesses that are very hesitant about taking a loan versus wanting a grant. And loans can help them sustain their business over a long term. And there are federal positions, benefits to these loans. But we have a business community that says, I don't want a loan. I just can't do that. The risk is too high for me. But what happens is that the grant is very, very short term, and it doesn't allow the business to have a long-term plan. So that's just one of the areas about resiliency that we need to focus on, is how do we change the conversation about what money can do for you and your business long-term. So starting about April 1 to the end of the year, we will be looking at all these different ideas as it relates to recovery, tying in money, tying in grants, and then resiliency as it moves into the future.
Okay, great. I think there's some wonderful ideas here. In terms of that April 1st start date, I guess there would be some type of schedule that would be identified and shared with the group in terms of when the task force were going to be assembled, and
yes,
there'll be some outline that we'll see, I guess, soon. Okay.
Yeah. I'm hoping by next month that I have a little bit more details around, is there a task force, who's on it, what are they doing, which one of these ideas and these buckets we're taking on. We can't take them all on. We don't have enough money or enough capacity. But that's sort of what we're juggling right now. So as we keep the balls in the air, that's what we're trying to do.
And that does make me think of another question. Does the city have funding for engaging in the type of planning that you're foreseeing that this would involve?
The city currently has no direct funding options. That's why we're pushing it out to April. We're kind of tracking this federal grant because we believe this federal grant addresses recovery and resiliency. And so that's why we're sort of tracking with it. But having some ideas on the table allows us to at least say, let's put them into categories. Let's figure out which ones are priorities, and then we can assign them to concepts that could be applied to grant funding.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Final question, and it's more of a point. When I look at the 7 bullets that are identified here, one thing, and I'm kicking myself for saying it because this word is so cliche, but the idea around creating, first assessing obviously the needs and the barriers that are business owners are dealing with, but identifying where the gaps in resources are. And so if you, here's that word, but if you do look at where supporting the current ecosystem is, I don't know where that really fits in with this, although these are very broad, so maybe it does fit in there, but I'm just raising that point because obviously there's a lot of talk right now that's really exciting around how to support ecosystems and making them resilient, around making sure that businesses have the resources that they need. And then the other thing that's really exciting is, look, because you do identify leave no dollar behind and reducing tax dollars that are leaving the city. But there's so much exciting work around closed loop economy that does fit into ecosystem development. So just throwing that out there. I don't know
Yeah.
where that would fit
That's perfect.
within
No,
these.
that's a really good catch. Is that the ecosystem, they're your partners thick and thin, and we need to sort of bring that to the table. So and I put that in the unleash your local economy, because that's where partners kind of come in. Is that we know as a staff we cannot do this ourselves, so we will reach out to our partners, our advisory partners, our business partners, our nonprofit partners to help figure that out. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Next, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm going to try to stick to process here, but in the course of talking about a couple of process areas, I will delve into line item action that might fit into that process. Just a couple of areas. I'd first like to just touch on capacity because Madam Chair mentioned how much you all are doing, and you are. It's been admirable and refreshing. I remember, seems just a few moments ago, it was, you and Miss Camacho were the newbies, and we're like practically the entire department, and it was like, oh my God, how are we going to get things done? And you've proven to be a much more go-to guy. Some of the assessors, you're positive, you're thoughtful, and your staff is in the same mold. That said, and the positive side of that is, and this is private sector, but it's public sector too. When you prove you can take a lot on your back and get it done, your reward is more work.
Yes.
And to my mind, that's how you got this COVID app. And I don't like to see my economic development department working on a COVID app. I don't get that, even though you can create a dotted line. That's just one example. So I'm concerned about capacity because what challenges smaller organizations most of all is the capacity to do things. I work with a lot of startups, and there's always so much to do, and you never want to be challenged on the capacity side because if you've got the talent and these things are waiting for you to go and get them, then you do it, and you can't let capacity and money get in the way. You've got to do what there is to be done. And so I would encourage you, I hate to kind of say it, I know there's everything you're doing is important, and we've got this kind of needy, it's a little town with all these needs and things that it does. And we've got our generational challenges. But I would encourage you to be ruthless in looking at least the next year, and in terms of what your capacity really is, knowing you're going to get thrown stuff to do because of what you've proven you can do, and be ruthless, and on two ends, okay? So be ruthless in terms of what you can do now and what it's really going to take to move the meter and serve the community. And then take that, the budget starts tonight with City Council. And, because I think we missed an opportunity last year, and I know we were freaked out over money last June, rightly so, but I also think there was a lack of vision, because that was the moment to put extra money into economic development. That was the moment to say, this, not only do we not make big cuts in this department, this is the department we go extra on, because smart people know that you be strong in a downturn and you whip out of the curve on the other side. That I would have advocated that up and down the line, as scared as we all were. But now with the new budget coming, this is another moment to really talk economic walk. For example, just one example of what I mean by that, this is the moment to get a full-time grant writer in your department. It's going to pay for itself 6 ways till Sunday, okay? And we can talk about all those grants that are out there. Oh, money's raining. Yeah, it is. But guess what? The best grant writers in the country are going to be attacking that fruit. It's going to be more competitive than ever. And let's face facts, New Mexico is not sexy or politically viable. We're not a battleground state. We don't have a lot of electoral votes. We're probably not going to lose a seat to the other side in 2022. And, we'll see, maybe the Albuquerque seat, but you know what I'm saying. We're not where the juice is, okay? And which isn't to mean we won't get any grants, but that's a heck of a headwind. So we need a proven, experienced, tiger of a grant writer to go out and get money for us, and he or she'll pay for themselves. And now's the moment, because who knows what kind of funds beyond the feds will be out there. I can only imagine the grants that are out there and the opportunities. So that's just one example of how to think about the process of budget. On the one hand, being realistic about capacity and really limiting your focus so that the top things get done, in addition to all that workaday stuff you got to do. And then number two, increasing capacity in areas that we know we need to compete in and we'll get a return on our investment.
Mr. Fines, can I just interject for a second? I just want to put some clarity on a point, because I want to first say amen. You're saying the right things, but I also want to tip my hat, because if you recall, and I think some people might recall here, I was the person that told the mayor that I was expecting an earthquake in January of 2020. And the reason why Sean Moody is here today is because I needed money to stimulate the economy, even though we're going into a deficit. I fought to have Sean Moody come on because I thought if we sell our assets to bring money to the table, it'll allow me to have some flexibility to bring things on. The other piece is, that's why I'm saying amen, is that I also said that every department should use a little bit of their money to get a grant writer. There are issues on the back end. You can get a grant, but if you can't manage it, you're having problems. But I asked, those are the two things that I thought. We need to stimulate our economy. We need money for that. And then we also should get grant writers. I was going to fund a grant writing workshop so that we all could share in grant writers. And then the pandemic hit, and then we didn't have any food. But I wanted to say amen to you, because you're hitting all the right buttons that we do need to address. Again, we need to address them again.
Yeah, the Santa Fe is it's an ongoing weakness, this grant writing piece, and it would be so easily addressed. So thank you. Quickly, just a couple of other points. I know I talk about modeling after other cities a lot, but one of the things that interested me about the 2010 to 2012 period was those who mastered it and those who didn't. And we might think there's no analog to Santa Fe. And in some cases there aren't analogs to Santa Fe. You can't find a city 5 times our size with as many museums or with a think tank and an opera house. But that's, but that can fool us into thinking about what we can adopt. I remember the tech people when Joshua Alicio took over, terrific guy, and they had to do some kind of new website thing. Everything, as we know, was a 20-year mess. And they actually noted that Seattle was doing something along the lines of what they wanted to do. Contacted Seattle. Seattle couldn't have been more helpful. So here's this big city, and you think, oh, but they couldn't have been more helpful. That collegiality amongst departments. And so, let's take a look at what people are doing now. But 2010 to 2012 is a very analogous situation to economic catastrophe and people being creative with limited funds to come out of it. I know New York, you might not be New York, New Mexico, night and day, right? But they did some things with taxes that really helped them attract business. And so I would encourage you or someone on your staff to take a review of the winners of the Great Recession and some policies and procedures and things that people did to come out of that. I think you'll find ideas. Lastly, I believe, I don't know if this is process or not, but I'm impressed that you're getting 80 inquiries a day about licenses. Very exciting, but I assume you don't have demographics on that. Why would you?
No, I don't.
I'd like to talk about brain drain, because as we all know, that's one of these generational pains of our city and our state. This is probably a time where young people who've just come through the worst year of their life and are 22, 19, 24, there's going to be really sweet gigs opening up in the Austins and Chicagos and LAs of the world, Silicon Valley. We could lose because they're not in that place where they're going to get a business license. They're not at that place in life where where they might think they're ready to be an entrepreneur, all that. So I've mentioned this before. It's probably been a while, but I don't know if this is happening to some degree in the state legislature. I'm trying to follow all the bills. And it's just a handful with everything else I've got going on. But I just have this dream that UNM, maybe other schools, maybe the state econ department probably, and maybe local econ, or there's some nexus point where we could incentivize people to stay and start businesses, or take jobs in our community. There's got to be a win-win-win there. I don't have a huge background in making that kind of thing happen. Here I am being the idea man, which is easy to do. But I have this idea that the answer to brain drain is a public-private education sector nexus point where we can just throw incentives on the table and everybody wins. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and thank you for your time. Good luck with the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Very, very, very interesting comments. Who else? Any other comments on Rich's presentation? Okay, I want to make a comment about the business licenses, and I had to renew my license, and I know, because I'm an Apple user, a Mac user, that it doesn't work well with that at all. And I struggled and struggled online to try to make it work, and then I realized, oh, this probably is because it's not Mac friendly. So Rich, I know that, a lot of people have moved over from PCs, and is there any appetite to have this work on both types of platforms?
Madam Chair, that's a good question. And it's funny how there was a trend years ago where everyone was working on a Mac. And then the pandemic hit, everybody went home. And most of the private businesses, enterprises, and the City Hall moved back to their PC world because we all got laptops. 1,400 employees, or really that much. They all got laptops. And so I need to ask the InterGov folks why it's an incompatible system that you can't interface on a Mac, a Safari, whatever it is. Coming from a PC person for the last 30 years, I completely understand what you're saying, but I don't know the answer to that, and I'm hoping that at some point I can get you one. But I will ask the InterGov folks, because I do have a conversation with them about business licensing and the technology. But I don't know why that. With technology today, I mean, you could, my kid does these crazy things where they make a scribble and they send it to a person every day. Like, if you can do that, you could be able to be compatible between a Mac and a PC. But I don't know why that's.
Well, and of course, I was one of the ones who, crowded up the phone line. So, I don't know how many of those users that the phone calls are being made because of the same thing. And maybe I missed the fine print somewhere, but I'm not sure. It could have said, hey, this doesn't work on Safari, or it only works on this. So nevertheless, it's in the event we can be a little more customer service friendly about that and cut down on staff workload where, we can make things work online and then be done with it. That would be great. I will say that I don't know if anybody, I'm sure some of you get licenses you register your burglary alarm license, because we have to do that too. That program says that it does not work on Safari and such, but it does. I just kept doing it and it does work. So, I'm not sure. That's kind of a little different subject, not in your bailiwick, but I was just hoping that maybe we could move toward that as well. And that might cut down on some of the reasons that the online system, just doesn't work. And hopefully we can make some headway there. The other question you brought, the idea of hiring grant writers is a good one. And I'm wondering, Rich, is that anything you put in your budget for this upcoming year?
I have a little set aside, but it's not specifically for grant writers. But we have a new administration and we have a impending coming out, and so it is something that keep in mind. I have a community development department, so I have to look at a bigger giant picture. But it's something that we've been talking about as departments to say, how can we collaborate? And the collaboration might be that you get many more grants when you collaborate or regionalize it. So we are talking about how we can get a grant writer in, and we could be talking about $25,000. You know, you could be as little as $25,000. So it is something definitely we want to consider. And it could be that some of the grants that you get, you're allowed to pay for services. So it's already baked into the grant money that you get. But, you know, you have to have the capacity to go out there and reach for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Johanna, please.
Thank you, Counselor. I just had one point that Mr. Fines made me think of. If brain drain is one of the points that's going to be addressed, looking at those seven steps that you're addressing, figuring out, as I'm reading it, I don't see a clear identification of like the sense of place that you hear a lot of talk about, like what's being done to build up an environment that is attracting the people that are looking at leaving, or the ones that are coming from San Francisco or some of the bigger metro areas. I was reading an article this morning about the percentages that are leaving and what's motivating them to leave. And then the other comment too that I was going to bring up is I'm sure you're all aware of some of the organizations that exist in New Mexico that you can, for example, the Grant Plant, you can contract with them. So, all right, just throwing that out there. All right, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the presentation that you put together and thought it was really insightful.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. Great. I want to just address something you just said, and Mr. Fine said too. It's funny, I'm getting so many inquiries from companies that want to help us entice people. You know, there's like 15 cities that are targets for this sort of transfer. These remote workers are moving to Bentonville, Arkansas, right? But at the same time, they're offering like $20,000 incentives to come. Well, we have lots of young students who went to St. Mike's, have graduated and have gone off to far and wide, but they've come back because the culture of the city here is everyone loves their Santa Fe. And so to the brain drain standpoint, we are seeing that we're getting these pre-boomerangs that are coming back and living here. And so we're trying to address sort of what are the fundamental issues that they need to have: housing, broadband, et cetera, the nightlife, all those pieces. That's where we're trying to figure out how to address that. It's a lower investment that will pay off greatly in the long term. So we know that our graduates of 2022, 2021, those are the ones that we want to target before they leave, to say, hey, stay here. We're going to build your social capital. We're going to find you a place to live ultimately, and make sure that you can remote work here. And most of these big enterprises, Facebook, Google, et cetera, are actually hiring at the location, not necessarily in Santa Fe, in San Francisco or San Jose anymore. They're saying, stay where you are. We see you're talented. We can work on this from a knowledge worker standpoint through your computer system. So we see that the brain drain issue is there, and we've kind of walked away from the recruiting people. We don't have enough money to do it, and two, we have enough talent here just from UM students that we can invest in the talent we have here. So I wanted to address that piece.
Johanna, do you have any other comments?
Well, I was just going to say thank you so much, Rich. And then one other thing too is that you mentioned inclusiveness and equity, making sure that that's a point that will be addressed in the diversity or in the recovery plan, and just throwing it out there too that the subset of women business owners have been so impacted as well, and how it's tied into daycare. So throwing that out there for consideration, because there's some really interesting stats out there about how that population has been affected negatively too.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Part of this federal stimulus has this giant program that's going to pay up to $3,000 for children under 17, and that will address this really horrible issue of women who have dropped out of the workforce because of childcare issues. They've made the choice between childcare or work, and so we're losing a lot of talent out in the marketplace. So that we're hoping, and that's our community health and safety group and community services group that's going to talk really about that equity, homelessness, sick pay, unemployment benefits, and childcare is where they'll fit into the.
Okay, Thank you, Johanna. Thank you, Rich. Ryan Gallagher and then John.
Oh, I think great touch on keeping our younger generations in Santa Fe after graduation, whether it's their bachelor's or master's degrees. One of the problems I had when starting a business back June 2019, I met with a lot of different resources that are easy to search for and kind of first dive in to see who should I contact. But I had an extremely hard time finding funding, a hard time through the city to find resources on kind of a easier step-by-step process of how to get the license, then to go have the fire department go and give you your occupancy, et cetera. So I think touching on a good program for younger people to be able to reach out and have more resources to lean on would be really, I think, a attractive feature. I know it would take a lot of workload to do that, but I think that could be really helpful for 25-year-olds like me to continue to be able to even open up a business here in Santa Fe.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, and we might reach out to you, Ryan, because we do have Liz and I had started a pre-boomerang program, and it might be a great way to sort of think about all of this sort of hidden talent of young people who did not go back to school, even though they're probably working remotely in school. That innovation is in your backyard, and how do we make it so it's easy steps based upon how they currently interact with themselves or with the business. And it could be all on a mobile app, it could be all digital, but in looking at the resources that come around for that.
Thank you, Ryan. John?
You're muted, John.
I never do that. Gosh darn it. Dang, a year into Zoom. Rich, thank you very much for for making that point about remote hiring. I was aware of that. I think a key for our community is, and you may have thought of this, I just can't help but share it. We need to make sure that these young people know how to write a cover letter, a resume, video interviewing. And
soft skills.
A lot of them won't. And so we may need to, once again, some kind of partnership where we can, so I think a PSA to raise awareness about remote job opportunities, and then some kind of facility to make sure that they know how to go through the process. I had a great education. It took me 10 years to figure out how to do a resume and a cover letter. It's a slog for a young person to get that good. So, and I'd be happy to volunteer in any kind of mechanism that was created to make sure that goes well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. Ryan Cordova, I see you.
Just real quick, following up on, thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on what John and Ryan just talked about, Camila Bustamante doesn't sit on this committee, I don't think anymore, but Santa Fe Community College, I think they have a SBDC over at Santa Fe Community College, and the SBDC partnering up with them, that's exactly what they do, is help prepare young business startups to follow that process. So, and they cover everything from applying for grants and cover letters, resumes, all that good stuff. So maybe teaming up with them or directing, somehow interconnecting the two would be beneficial for young startup businesses.
Thank you, Ryan. That's good to know, because we do have resources in the community that we can partner with that already do that and take advantage of it. And the community college, I know, offers many, many things. So it's a good resource. We need to use that institution much more. All right. Any other? Oh, there we go. Megan, I see you. Go ahead.
Well, just because you brought up the community college. So the state SBDC is housed at Santa Fe Community College, and the Santa Fe SBDC is housed at the Santa Fe HEC. And then there are also other community organizations that can help small businesses. Rich and the community college we're all talking about, how we make these connections and build these support systems. So I think it's all part of our active conversation.
Thank you, Megan. And also Liz hasn't raised her hand, but Liz has a very informative newsletter that on a monthly basis tells you about all the resources that are out there. And it's incredible the amount of webinars that either we're sponsoring or are happening in the community. So I encourage you all, or Liz, to make sure that everybody here is on our newsletter list to find out what's happening.
Fantastic. Okay. I think to recap, first of all, Rich, thank you and your staff for developing the presentation today. I think this has been one of the best meetings I think we've had. I mean, they're all good, don't get me wrong, but there's been such creative discussion and such ideas, and that's one of the things we need to do. What the purpose of a strategic plan is, to just bring all these together and not lose track, not lose sight of them. So with regard to process, Rich, I think you've gotten some great information here, and I trust that you'll pack it all up, and then when you come back, we will have a plan of action, maybe a calendar which says, about when some of these strategic planning sessions can start, and just how we end up to the end result. And of course, it's going to be a living, breathing document. And I know we can change it along the way, but the first thing we have to do is get started. So with budgetary matters, Rich, I think you certainly have to take a look at the budget process and see where maybe we can fit this in. And if you need the support at your budget hearings, please call on us so that we can help you get that accomplished.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. I do want to run through the strategic plan document. I just want 5 minutes just to run through it.
Absolutely.
We can have some conversations, but just so everyone knows on the committee, I have put in money to start the strategic planning process in the budget for next year. So I've sort of set aside money for consulting services so that we can get it through. So we're looking at asset development, we're looking at growth optimization, we're looking at strategic planning. So all of that is in there. I don't know if I'll get everything, but those pieces are a part of my ask for the next fiscal year. So, and the fiscal year starts in July, so I will definitely be lobbying on behalf of as Mr. Fine said, be ruthless about your priorities. So I think is correct. So so I just want to quickly go through the second half, which is the strategic plan. I just want to make sure we're all sort of in an alignment of a lot of the elements, and not all, and this is not a plan, it's just an overview of the elements of what the plan sort of starts with as it relates to, we're not in 2009 anymore. I don't think any of you guys had a photo and your music on your phone in 2009. And so the times have changed so much. And so as we look at our demographics, as we look at our city, as we look at our businesses, we look at about diversified economy, this plan sort of is going to address some of those issues. And that's why we're going outside, because there's a lot of market research and data that needs to be captured, plus public input to make it sort of how we wanted to see it. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of it. I think Fabian put it in the packet last night, but I just want to do a quick run through just to highlight some of the areas. So I want to start with this slide. So one of the things that when I came on board at Economic Development, we were recognizing when we were trying to start our initial strategic plan is that there are these fundamental components of a successful city, fundamental components. And so when you look at these boxes, keep in mind that these are what we call the fundamental components. The bigger issue is that business and jobs, transportation, food, and housing are the elements of a social determinants, right? Those are the key social determinants of health. But then you have the rest of these categories that allow you to say, how do you measure success for a city? Some cities our size never look at their city this way, but we are starting to do that. These are fundamental elements that as an economic development organization, we should have our finger on the pulse about what happens. And this is a part of the ingredients that go into a strategic plan. We have launched a city data platform that's starting to track some of this. It's not all of it yet, but we started the city data platform that starts to sort of track some of these fundamental city components. And this is where kind of the data gathering will help inform us as we look at how it mixes into the business, the residents, and the tourists, and what we do for the future. As a city, we have these various quality of life ambitions and part of our charter. I've highlighted sort of the bold points about where it fits into economic development, but these are also these ingredients that will fit into what does a plan look like when you go out into the community. From an economic development standpoint, bigger picture, I call it the 1,000-foot view. You know, we're using our talent and our tools and resources to sort of create conditions. We are catalyzers. We're not necessarily widget keeblers. We are actually catalyzers. We go out, we partner with people, we work with different organizations to catalyze and create conditions to allow for the economy to expand and grow. We as a department look at these principles as a way for us to address our key audiences, again, business, residents, and tourists. These are what we think about when we become economic developers. So some of the goals that we look at, there's a lot on here. It's a lot of copy. You don't have to read it all, but you know, the key thing, talent. We've been talking about talent, pre-boomerangs, recruiting, keeping people here. Talent is the key for us as we go into the future. Balance and accelerate. That's sort of don't leave any money off the table, or on the table rather. Strength and diversification. We need to diversify our economy so when we get sort of really big issues like this, we can steady that ship. Dual audience strategies. Again, the perfect example of Ryan, I think, admitted that he's 25. So Ryan, for him to have a great future here and really have a great life, we need to look at families by day and adults by night. He needs to have a place to go to be social, not just in the daytime for business social, but for personal social. That networking breeds that culture that we want for the future. More startups, we've been talking about that too. Lots of entrepreneurial investments on accelerators and incubators. Grow and retain, we're looking at businesses that are expanding, recruiting great companies. There's at least 3 companies I can think of that are looking at Santa Fe. I got an inquiry last night from a tech company that's looking to come to Santa Fe and start up a satellite office, so I'm very excited about that conversation. Working on a collaboration. I think I talked earlier about the innovation triangle, which is Los Alamos, Albuquerque, and Santa Fe. Those are kind of the drive-through triangle of innovation for us. There's 2 labs there, and we have this culturally rich city. We need to work together from a collaboration standpoint. And self-sufficiency just means that as a city, we can invest and catalyze for growth, but some of the things that we invest in need to be incubated to go on their own. They need to also find their funding sources so that we can also then accelerate and incubate new ideas. This next slide just talks about the pieces in green. I talked about them earlier, but these are some areas of interest to, again, Mr. Fine's point about being ruthless about priorities. Strategic asset development is one of our priorities, right? Entrepreneurship and innovation is one of our priorities. Workforce and job training, talk about the soft skills piece. Workforce and job training, one of our priorities. Through this fiscal year and the next, and for the next 5 years, it does not stop. So this was the big aha thing for me, is that, and I put it in the deck that you guys received, is that here is kind of a viewpoint of our SWOT analysis. What are our strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats? So as we look at this framework for economic development, for strategic economic development, we have to keep all of these strengths and weaknesses in mind as we balance out what helps us look at from now to 2030, from now to 2040. How do we address our weaknesses? How do we address our threats? How do we take advantage of our opportunities? How do we take advantages of our strengths? And then from an economic indicator standpoint, these are just some key points that ultimately the plan should inform as an outcome these types of metrics that we can come back to you, the EDAC committee, to say on a quarterly basis, here's kind of the key indicators that have happened once this plan is in place. And then lastly, there's some, I think that Fabian has given everyone some of the reports when you came on board as a council committee member, but there's a couple of the reports that if you'd like to read them, there are at least 150 pages, but if you'd like to read them, you can catch up with us on what the consultants have been saying about the city. And as you know, from 2017 to now is a whole different life in the city of Santa Fe. And that's it.
Thank you, Rich. That last slide, was that in our packet? I'm
That should be.
I just wanted to make sure.
If not, I can update, I can send it to you guys. It's PDF.
Anybody else find it in their packet? Could be out of order. I'm assuming you went in order, so maybe I'm just
Yeah,
not.
that was the last slide, but I mean, it's just a list of all the reading
Right.
material. You know, if you add it up, it's about a little bit larger than War and Peace, but it's a lot of good reading.
Okay. Johanna, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, I'd love to see it. I don't think it was in mine, but if you could send it, that'd be
The
great.
slide deck?
Just the last.
It was in
piece
the
that had
packet I
the-
sent you last night.
Oh, it is? Okay. I don't think I saw it, so I'll look again. My
I didn't
apologies.
see it
I'll look
either,
at it.
Fabian. I didn't see that last page. Why
Okay.
don't you go ahead and send it,
Sure.
just that page? That would be great.
Fabian is missing from the packet.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, great. This has been fabulous. I appreciate it, Rich, again. And I think this last piece that you presented is a great way to get us all kind of on the same page about, okay, this is what we're going to focus on. And of course, as always, any new ideas are welcome. But I think this is a very well-rounded presentation. And I look forward to continuing this process. I think it will make us all more focused as a committee, give us a sense of purpose, and give us something to work on and help you, achieve the goals, help economic development achieve the goals for the betterment of our city. So again, thank you. And any of you have any questions from today, after today's meeting, I'm going to say, feel free to call Rich or anybody on the staff. Feel free to call me if you have any specific things you want to work toward that maybe weren't mentioned here. I'm happy to help. All right. Okay, so next item is presentation. We have none. Public comment is next. Fabian, was there anyone who submitted public comment?
No, there were no submissions for public comment.
And I looked on our participants today and I don't see anybody in the waiting room to comment either. So we'll move from that to matters from staff.
Madam Chair, I have a couple of matters. First, I want to welcome Ryan to our committee. Welcome, Ryan. We're glad that we have young people here on our committee. Before I get to all the matters from staff, I wanted to ask if I could introduce my staff to you so that they know, so you know who they are. So I'm going to go around this, if I could, Madam Chair. We'll start with Sean Moody. Your name and what you do. Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, yeah.
Appropriate. I'm hired as the asset development manager. It's a role I filled a couple of years ago when Matt O'Reilly stepped away, and it at that time was focused, I would say, as much on land use as on revenue generation. I think this time around, at least for the time being, we're trying to get some revenue coming out of the office. But my background was construction contracting, and then the site development for the Santa Fe Rail Yard. I developed and implemented the city's telecom network called Santa Fe Fiber, and then helped last year to start what is the public Wi-Fi response to the COVID thing. So I've been around in and out of the city for years. Happy to be here. I also want to give a nod in passing to my excellent colleague Fabian, who is, I want to say, consistently in the top 10 of our sartorial performance, and he'll be leaving. I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but Fabian's been great working with you.
Thanks, Sean. Liz, would you like to? You're next on the box.
Hi, Ryan. Welcome aboard. My name is Liz Camacho. I am the Economic Development and Communications Administrator. I handle a lot of the outreach that we do, depending on the projects. During the pandemic, I have tried to get the word out as much as possible on resources that are available, and also been working on the Santa Fe Promise with other departments to address the needs of high vulnerable index communities, and in general, COVID information to our residents.
Thanks. Lauren, would you like to be the next person on?
Hi, Ryan. I am an asset associate and I work on broadband and leases.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Janice, would you like to?
Yeah, hi. Hi, welcome, Ryan. Nice to see you here and everyone from the committee. I'm Janice Krish. I've been with the city in this position for a little bit over a year. I'm the economic development specialist and I do a lot of various tasks here, but primarily I'm focused on workforce development and small business survival, small businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic. So when I came on board, the pandemic hit a couple months later. So we shifted over to a lot of the types of assistance we could provide for small businesses and entrepreneurial pathways.
Great. Thanks, Janice. And then last but not least is Fabian Trujillo. As Sean had mentioned earlier, this week, Fabian announced his retirement from the city of Santa Fe after 20 plus years, I think. So he's a little grayer than us, but so we're sad that this is his last EDAC committee meeting because he's leaving on March 26th. But I want to publicly say that we thank you for all that you've done, Fabian. I'm a newbie in the 20-year reign here in the city of Santa Fe, and I've learned a lot. And he's a part of why I think I'm sitting in this chair because of the institutional knowledge that he's been sharing with me and others. And so I want to just say bravo to you, Fabian, and hopefully we'll see what your next chapter will be. But I want to say thank you for your service, and then maybe you can let Ryan know why we think so highly of you.
Well, thank you, Rich. That was really nice of you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be serving, with the city. I've been the staff liaison for EDAC and formerly BQL for over 10 years. And so it's a pleasure to be working with all of you. It's a pleasure to be working with my colleagues. I'm going to miss you. But as they say, it's time for a new page in your life, and so I'm excited about the new possibilities. I have over 20 years of economic development experience, both in the city and the state. I've recruited over 25 companies to the state of New Mexico with over 5,000 jobs. I help about 200 businesses a year. So all those kinds of things, but I'm not going away. I have just started up my own economic development consulting business, which will be starting on March the 29th. And I'll be a real estate agent doing commercial real estate development probably in about 3 months. So those are the things that I will be doing as part of my post life, and who knows what else. So again, it's been a pleasure to be here. I look to see you in the private sector, but there's still 2 more weeks, so there's a lot of stuff to get done.
Yes, there is a lot done. Yes, definitely. So thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Ryan.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, that was a shocker.
Yes.
Hey, goodness. Okay, so thank you, Rich. Anyone else on staff have any matters that you would like to bring up? Okay. All right, matters from the committee. Just raise your hand and I'll see if I see you. Okay, I don't see anyone. Matters from the chair. Oh, I'm sorry, John, did I see your hand?
Yeah, just very quickly, I want to congratulate Mr. Trujillo for leaving such an awesome legacy for our community. Just the LEDA shepherding alone is a tremendous legacy, but there's a lot more than that. So we have great thanks, and we hope that he'll be available to advise us and make a great transition. I just can't believe he thinks that he can make more money in the private sector than working for government. I mean, entrepreneurs are high in the sky, but wow, you might want to rethink it just for a minute.
Okay, thank you, John. Matters from the chair. Fabian, I'm just, I'm a little bit blown away. I can't believe it. You are an institution here. You should have never said there's 2 weeks left, because everybody's going to load on, you know, you're not going to be able to walk out the door as happily as you just announced your retirement. But anyway, I'm very, very appreciative for the work that you've done since I've been chair, which has been about just a little over a year, I guess. You know, I'm really going to be sad to see you go. You know, we do a little sparring getting this agenda together and such, but you know, I've really appreciated you being there, and certainly your historical knowledge and your institutional knowledge. That's something that, you know, we can't replace. And we've learned that along the city departments, we can't replace institutional knowledge. And so I know that's something that's dear to you. And I think you can retire knowing that you gave your very best, and you sure did.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone and those who aren't on this committee any longer appreciate the service that you gave to the city. And too bad we have COVID, because we could be giving you a big old cake and coffee and whatever right now. So, you know, I'm sure we all in our individual ways can reach out to you and thank you more personally. I'm happy that I still get to work with you on your neighborhood association. So I can still harass you there.
Or maybe the opposite, huh?
In fun, of course, you will harass me, because that is truly what happens. Make that mistake. We kind of reverse roles. But, you know, you've been a very gracious person in delivering your service, and it's very appreciated. And I'm just like blown away right now. So I'm sure we'll talk again soon. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That leaves us to our next meeting, which I was looking at the schedule, and our next meeting, we usually tag along with council days, and that would be April 14th, but there's city budget hearings all afternoon starting at 1, and then we go into city council. So this meeting would never finish or even load up on staff again for that day. But I don't know, Rich, I guess I'll leave it to you to.
Yeah, you and I, we'll talk through another date. It'll happen in April, but.
I think, you know, normally we do Wednesdays, but we can do a different day, but April 7th is open and not a council meeting, but there could be other things happening. So you and I can talk, but I just ask everyone to leave your schedules handy, and what Rich and I will work on is to at least get you all notified of a date that we think might work, and then see, hopefully we can have a quorum on that date. So that's how I think our approach should work. And of course, Elizabeth will work with you to see if you're available. All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I add one more thing? I failed to introduce Elizabeth Martin. Elizabeth has been a stenographer for EDAC for many, many years. And when I had learned that Fabian was retiring, we reached out to her to see if she could join us to come back. She has as much institutional knowledge about this committee, and is great at getting our notes and agenda together. And as you said, we've talked about a lot today. So I really appreciate that Elizabeth is here today, because it'll be clear what the back and forth and our debate and statements have been. So this is a boon for us to have her today, and I appreciate her stepping up, because it just happened over the last 48 hours that she said she would join us. So she will be here for our next meetings going forward, even though we're in a virtual environment. But I wanted to say thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us and for a good meeting today.
Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here.
She has a question.
I don't know a question. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to be back. I always enjoy this meetings, and I appreciate it, the opportunity. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Robert, you have your hand up, and then, or Johanna. I may have you out of order, but anyway, go ahead, Robert.
Just to comment, it's nice having Elizabeth and your cat with us.
Oh, you saw that, huh? Thank you, Robert.
Johanna?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if I wasn't sure where the appropriate time to comment was, but I just wanted to say publicly how much I appreciate Fabian's service, and it's been such an honor working with him since I've come to New Mexico. So thank you so much, Fabian. You are leaving quite a legacy. So it's been an honor to work with you. Thank you so much. And I wish you the best, and I will definitely reach out.
Thank you, Johanna.
All right.
This is the second committee we've served together on.
Oh. Wow, that's good. That's pretty cool to know. All right, anyone else? Okay, well then, next item is to adjourn the meeting, and I appreciate everyone being here, and thank you for all of your comments. Very much appreciated. Goodbye, go out there and be safe.
Godspeed, Fabian.
Godspeed, Fabian, yeah.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.